Jake, uniform, not spotty. Everybody's got to do it. There's no excuse not to do that right now because we know that can turn things around. I mean, that's the tool we have. As I've mentioned just recently, and as you alluded to, we have good news with regard to the vaccine. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. Help is coming, and that should, I believe, motivate people to just say we're going to double down and do this uniformly. Those are the tools we have right now, and they do work. We can get this to plateau and come down. We've got to, I mean, obviously everyone is sensitive to what we call COVID fatigue. People are worn out about this, but we've got to hang in there a bit longer, particularly as we get into the holiday seasons and the colder weather as we get into the late fall and early winter months. We've got to hang together on this, Jake, because we can make it turn around. We really can. It is possible, Jake, and the issue is the models, as I've said so often, are as good as the assumptions you put into the model. And we've got to change those assumptions. We've got to say we're going to turn it around by very, very vigorously adhering to the public health measures. And we don't need to get to that number. That's a model number if we act in a certain way. We can turn that around. That plus the fact that we're going to start getting doses of vaccines available for the highest priority individuals sometime in mid to late December. And then as we get into January, we'll get more vaccine doses available. I think when we put those two things together, vaccine plus strong adherence to the fundamental public health measures, we can blunt that. We don't have to accept those large numbers that are so terrifying. I think that likely will happen, Jake, if we don't turn around this surge. I mean, you're right. We're not going to get a national lockdown. I think that's very clear. But I think what we're going to start seeing in the local levels, be they governors or mayors or people at the local level, will do, as you said, very surgical type of restrictions, which are the functional equivalent of a local lockdown. But we're not going to have a national lockdown. But, you know, if things really get bad and you put your foot on the pedal and yet still you have the surge, you may need to take the extra step that you're talking about. You know, it depends on a number of factors, Jake. For example, we have vaccines now. The first one that came out was highly effective. I anticipate that the second one likely will be comparable. You never can tell until you see the data, but would be comparable. That's great, but we have to get people to take the vaccine. So if we get the overwhelming majority of people taking the vaccine, and you have on the one hand an effective vaccine, on the other hand a high degree of uptake of the vaccine, we could start getting things back to relative normal as we get into the second and third quarter of the year, where people can start thinking about doing things that were too dangerous just months ago. But we've got to put all those things together, Jake. We can't just wish it happening. We've got to get the vaccine, it's got to be deployed, and we can't abandon fundamental public health measures. You can approach a degree of normality while still doing some fundamental public health things that synergize with the vaccine to get us back to normal. Well, you know, I think that if we get most of the country vaccinated in the second, third quarter of the year, and the vaccine continues to prove its efficacy and people adhere to those fundamental measures, I think we can start approaching the degree. It's not going to be a light switch, Jake. We're not going to turn it on and off, going from where we are to completely normal. It's going to be a gradual accrual of more normality as the weeks and the months go by as we get well into 2021.